We're going to call this episode Indus Valley Report for Dummies.
And most importantly, they have built a FOMO and a vibe around this report.
Why the Indus Valley Report also is extremely appealing and reaches a very wide audience is because of the ease with which the whole report is made.
I think so. A report is as good as only number of people reading it. You create a world-class, in-depth report, and if no one's reading it, or if people are not able to understand it, what is the use of that report?
Who called it Indus Valley Report and not Life of Pi? Welcome to this week's edition of the Indian Startup Desktop. Let's go.
Hello.
Hello, everybody.
If you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do so below.
Please
So
subscribe.
this is a special episode on the Indus Valley Report. Now we've all heard of Silicon Valley, which is basically the startup ecosystem based in the US. Now India's startup ecosystem also has a similar name that our good friends at Bloom have coined. It's called Indus Valley. Now every year Bloom comes out with a really nice report called the Indus Valley Report that talks about consumption trends and just general patterns they observe in Indian economy and the Indian startup ecosystem. Saksham, do you want to give a lot more context?
Yeah. I think why the Indus Valley Report also is extremely appealing and reaches a very wide audience is because of the ease with which the whole report is made. You know, the low barrier to entry, easy to follow slides, not very in depth, so it's easy to consume, and it covers all the broad contours of things that are happening in the Indian economy, starting from an AI to a quick commerce, to a digital public infrastructure, so on and so forth.
And most importantly, they have built a FOMO and a vibe around this report. They have advertised it really well. The publicize it really well.
So mean.
Awesome.
Anyway, let's start off with some of the best Indus Valley Report memes. Indranagar 1 is reading Indus Valley Report. Indranagar 2 is waiting in line at Levant. And Indranagar 3 is battling a viral flu or a cold.
I actually have a cold today.
That's what is one of funniest. Who called it Indus Valley Report and not Life of Pi?
Oh, Sajid Pai.
So Sajid Pai is one of the notable people who work on the Indus Valley Report, hence Life of Pi. Okay, look at this. Saksham, I know you'll relate to this.
Hmm.
It's cute how men are brought together by the smallest of things like football, protein shakes, Sydney Sweeney, and Bloom's Indus Valley Report.
This cannot be more accurate. This is great.
This is crazy funny, dude. Like, got a copy of the Indus Valley Report by Bloom delivered to my house in 10 minutes with Let's Blink It. Sheesh.
Peak Bangalore stuff, dude. Seriously.
Whatever.
Also a little unnecessary.
That too black and white, dude. You could have read colored one only. Che.
Oh, that's
Really
Pawan's
a
concern. That's actually fair.
The Bloom report is really a beginner level report, but I like how they've built a brand or following around it. Like digging a bit deep, you'll find so much good in depth content by other players, but Bloom is really good at creating a hype. Pawan, do you want to give a quick commentary on this?
No, it's one of the things. I think so. A report is as good as only number of people reading it. You create a world-class, in-depth report, and if no one's reading it, or if the people are not able to understand it, what is the use of that report? It's mostly like our government publishing those RBI documents or lengthy PDFs. No one wants to read it at the end of the day. It should
Hmm.
technically be as simple as possible for public to understand. And I think so. Boom is doing a great job there.
But look at the other crazy reports that this OP has suggested. Elevation reports bottom line. Oh, this is actually a pretty good report, right?
It's a pretty good report actually.
Anybody working in fintech needs to read this report. Z47's another good deep dive on fintech fest and the Bessemer reports. I've not heard of this. Pavan, have you, Saksham?
No,
No,
I've
not
heard of the
really.
first two.
Yeah, I've not heard of this one.
There's one more which I want to give shout out is CRIF. That is one of the credit bureau sorts of India. They publish a report called as How India Lends. It's
Yeah,
a gold mine of data for everyone
Oh,
in
that
fintech.
report. Yeah.
yeah, that looks
Yeah.
nice.
Crazy. Anybody working in financial services needs to read that. I'm sure you already do, but it's important if you want to get into financial services as well. Let's start with our Indus Valley Report summary. We're going to call this episode Indus Valley Report for Dummies. Um, So there's this character on Grapevine that summarized Bloom's Indus Valley report by giving top 10 insights. So let's cover each of these highlights and cover some of our take on this, starting with the first one. Consumption driven economy with deepening inequality. I feel like this point has been spoken about almost every single year for the last 10 years, but this is paramount in even in startups, right? If you look at the numbers of an Uber, an Ola, a Zepto, Zomato, Swiggy, or any startup, even B2B startups like maybe a ClearTax or even a Razorpay, you will notice that top 10% of the people or top 10-15% of the people drive about 80% of the overall volumes and transactions for that respective company. So it's not like this is a prominent insight in Indian economy. This is paramount in almost every single facets of our life at least. Moving on to the second point, formalization of the economy. Saksham, do you want to chip in here?
Yes, absolutely. So I think the first bit that talks about obviously the number of registered businesses from a GST standpoint, right? I think why it matters is because it suggests a massive shift from cash-based unorganized businesses to more tax-compliant and formal enterprises, right? What this also means is that the cash economy is shrinking, right? That means a lot of the small traders who previously operated with, off the sort of books now have to comply with GST, making it harder to evade taxes. What this also means is, in let's say in the jewelry space, right? It's moved with players like Kalyan Jewelers, with players like Tanishq. That's becoming much more formalized. Even sectors like gaming today, there is an All India Gaming Federation that has come up, under which essentially all of the gaming norms in India are being sort of formalized, which I think is extremely great, right? Also, I think from a long term perspective, right? I think as more sectors get structured, India's tax to GDP ratio will also improve, which will allow for higher government spending on infrastructure, welfare, and incentive for businesses. So yeah,
As businesses evolve, it's also very important for people to make different modes for them, right? And one of the obvious modes becomes brand building.
yeah.
How will you differentiate? Because gold at the end is almost like a commodity which everyone has the same part. You can build it on designs, you can build it on brand, and I think so most things will go in that direction.
Can I move on to the
Let's
fourth
go
point?
to third. Third, right?
Yeah, please go ahead. Savings crisis and gold obsession. Pawan, do you want to comment over here?
Sure. I read this part of the report and I was not aware of this habit of Indians actually, but India was always a save first, buy later kind of economy. We always focused on savings. I think so. All of our parents were so obsessed with savings.
Yeah.
But it's very sad to see that culture drying up. India is not anymore a save first economy. Our savings numbers have dipped from 2000s to 2023, 2024 dates. Our savings, cumulative savings on an household level have reduced from 81% to close to 64%. In mortgage ratios on household levels, we are just two spots above US. And why I'm comparing US is because US is very notorious to not have a savings culture and having a high GDP to debt ratio on a country level. So countries like Korea and Thailand have been doing much well, kind of almost double of savings than India household level
Thailand's
compared
doing
to
well because
US.
of other reasons, but please go on.
I mean, you can't just push the thing there. But yeah, I think so. The thought process of the next generation is changing. It includes people like us as well, who are driving more towards a consumption-driven economy, spending more, increasing the economy in a different way. But I think so, having striking a good balance between saving as well as spending, those habits needs to be coming in our generation, next generation as well.
Yep, this is also the age of instant gratification and not delayed
Yeah.
gratification. So people don't want to get something 10 months down the line, even 1 month down the line. They want it now, they want it immediately, including people like us. So
Yeah,
I also
look at how Jar has grown, right? Like they've reached operating profitability as well, which is all about how do you save as little as 5 rupees on a daily basis and put that into gold because India is obsessed with gold.
dude, 20 million ARR, dude. I saw Nishchay's post a couple of weeks back and I was blown.
There are two parts. On the jar side, right?
Yeah.
The interesting part is a large amount of cred users has an overlap with the jar users, which is an interesting thing
Oh, is
because
it?
we think that cred is for top 1% and
Yeah.
jar is for like tier 3, tier 4. But there is a good overlap of people between cred and jar. That's one point. And second, most of this savings going down the drain is happening because of penetration of lending in India. So a lot of people who did not have access to formal finance before,
Hmm.
they have started to get access to formal finance, and most of the savings are now going towards EMI payments. That's also one of the patterns that are observed, and that delta is, earlier that number was 10%, which was going to savings. Now the 5% part of it is going towards EMI payments. That's where the money is going.
Moving on to the fourth point, human capital challenges. Youth unemployment rises with education levels. 28.7% for graduates versus 3.2% for non-graduates. This is a very sad data point, right? And unfortunately, we are not getting better than that. We are actually an economy that is primed to take over as one of the most largest and the most bustling economies in the world, but somehow unemployment is still rising. And this is also got to do with how a lot of us, even the recent graduates, are not job ready when they get to the market. Like, even my first job, whatever I learned from college had absolutely zero implications on how I can perform well at work. I had to start from scratch and learn everything from scratch again. I'm not sure how this can be improved, although I do commend companies like Stoa School, which now shut off, and a bunch of other schools that are kind of training graduates or people in college to become more job ready, because we know the drill, right? What you learn in college is not what you're going to do when you start working. So I really hope this changes, but that's it from my end. Saksham, Pavan, do you want to comment on this any further? Manufacturing struggles despite PLI push. Who wants to jump in
Yeah.
over here?
Let me take this. You guys can add thoughts to it as well. It's very interesting to see India as an economy. India as an economy is compared always to China, and China is one of those economies which is highly reliant on manufacturing. But India has taken a different route altogether. India as an economy is highly reliant on services. We are not a manufacturing first economy; we are a services first economy, and this has not been played out in the Indus Valley report in the same parts. They have spoken about services at the start of the report, and
Yeah.
manufacturing they have carved out separately. But India is making a hard push to get better at production and manufacturing. And the Indus Valley report gives a three interesting parts where PLI schemes have not solved the problem,
Hmm.
nor India has made good progress. That is land, labor, and capital. Labor is not getting better. Land is expensive here, and access to capital is not easy in India. And these three become very important for anyone to invest in India, or to get started with manufacturing in India, which is becoming the roadblock. The interesting trend that I found was the toy market, right? India used to import like close to 70 to 80% of the entire toys from China.
Yeah.
And because of the tariffs that have been added by governments, right, that has dropped to like close to 18% or 20%. I'm not
Wow.
sure of the number though. And Indian toys are coming up now, and this can be actually seen in the Shark Tank as well. In this season's
Yeah.
Shark Tank and last as well, there were so many toy companies that are coming out. So many people are building toys in India, selling toys for India. And now it's not about just replicating the toys, right? It's about Indian based toys. Like you have characters from India coming out as toys, so on and so forth. It's very interesting to see. Manufacturing as a whole, I think so. India will take a longer time because I don't see the lending in manufacturing also increasing. The first part of the Bloom report also shows how much lending that country is doing is going to the industrial sector. Those numbers are also stagnant from like 4 to 5 years. So until the capital problem is solved, I don't think so the other problems will be solved there. Hmm.
Moving on to the next bit, digital public infrastructure dominance. Saksham, I know this is a topic that you absolutely love talking about. In fact, we all do, but why don't you take this ahead?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think one of the key things to note, obviously, is that, India's global DPI model is unmatched, right? No other country has a digital payments infrastructure the way India has and how widely adopted it is in India. Even several nations like
Brazil.
your Brazil with PIX and UADI and UAE are actually studying UPI to replicate it. Having said that, obviously there are also issues. For example, ONDC, right? While ONDC onboarded around 700,000 sellers in the last year, I personally feel it doesn't pose a serious threat to an Amazon or a Flipkart today, right? It needs better seller support, logistics efficiency, and consumer adoption to scale further, right? Other thing also I feel is while banking sector is disrupted by all the fintechs, right, and traditional banks have lost fee-based income and all of this, fintechs have to make a shift towards lending and insurance and value-added services if they want to move towards profitability and higher revenue generation. I think these are key areas that we as an economy from a digital infra standpoint have to start really thinking about.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it all becomes commoditized services, and we are not really helping the economy grow the way that it should.
Moving on to venture funding, seed boom, late stage lag. Now we've all heard this from different pockets, whether it's through our VC friends, whether it's through our founder friends, but funding has dried up. You guys remember in 2021, anybody with a pulse and a pitch deck about what they're building, we used to get some level of funding, but right now it has changed. Seed rounds are getting larger. So before you go, let's say 5 years back, before you let's say go raise your Series A or you go raise your seed round, having a 50K ARR or a 1 million ARR was enough. But today, that's not the case. Even if you have 1 million ARR or a 2 million ARR, VCs think that you haven't really discovered a repeatable playbook. So they are asking companies to have a 3 million, 4 million, 5 million ARR just to complete seed rounds. So while the size of seed rounds are also increasing, the number of these rounds have massively decreased. Quick commerce, meteoric rise. Who wants to comment over here?
I can go. Awesome. So I think all of us are, it's all of us are aware of the growth that quick commerce has seen, especially in the last couple of years, right? Driven obviously by some of the ultra fast delivery applications like your Blinkit, Instamart, Zepto. Obviously, also driven by a lot of the hyper local dark stores that are these small, strategically placed warehouses which have low labor cost that essentially enables fast fulfillment, right? And I think today across all major metros, the delivery time is under 10 to 15 minutes, right? While all of this growth is great, right? I think there is still a huge challenge beyond the top 10% of the country, right? Which is that today expansion has happened to all the major metro cities, right? But the growth is not widening to include the India 2 or the middle income class that we essentially talk about, right? What this also means is that because of logistical constraints, there is no clarity on how much that market is going to expand and how it is going to expand, right? Other thing also is, which I strongly feel is today, it's a lot of investor funding, which currently supports all these discounts and free deliveries, right? Companies will eventually need to raise their delivery fee or reduce discounts, which could also slow down the user adoption, especially as we move towards the lower income segments of the country, which is India 2, India 3, and beyond that. Other point also to note is, food delivery today has very high margin business, right? Which is your because restaurants essentially bear these discounts and not these platforms. Whereas quick commerce discounts are entirely self-funded. So it's also to be seen how some of these companies essentially chase profitability, and when this VC money starts to run out, how then they will optimize on operating costs as well as profits.
Yeah.
I have few
So
contradictory opinions, Sakshim. I feel that India
Yeah.
2, India 3 would mostly be part of the delivery economy rather than the consumption economy here. Beyond India 1, I mean the tier 1 society of India, I think so when the quick commerce goes to tier 2, tier 3 cities and all that, just like how Blinkit is expanding now, they would be hard to find customers there. I think so there will be a lot of more delivery players rather than people who would want to grab these services because very cost conscious, income levels are lower. People don't care about convenience so much. It's very hard for a quick commerce play to go out of tier 1 society, not because of their availability of dark stores or building infrastructure or putting money. It would be more because finding demand would be harder.
I actually tend to agree. Actually, I read a very interesting line, I think recently after this report came out, which was to say Indians' love for ghar ka khana is essentially why a lot of this space is still unorganized and why penetration is so much more difficult as opposed to a country like a Singapore or any other country, sort of, as you move
This
even
was
more
Nikhil
west.
Kamath.
yeah,
Nikhil Kamat's post, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
move on to AI bit. Pavan, as our resident AI expert, why don't you comment over
Gen
here?
AI, 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 AI.
Okay, interesting. Like India should have foundation models or not. I think so. This is long debated on Twitter from last few weeks, and this specifically started happening. This specifically started happening after DeepSeek's release, which they claim that they built it in less than $6.5 million in cost of training, and with lesser resources, not having NVIDIA chips, so many constraints, so on and so forth.
Deep
In
seek.
the same time, this also goes back to 1.5 year back Sam Altman's video where Rajan Anandan from Sequoia had asked him that can India build a model in less than $10 million, which Sam Altman made a big joke out of. But we are seeing these things becoming a reality. The larger question does not happen to be does India has to build a foundational model or not. The larger part depends upon what are the use cases that we can build. Okay, fine, tomorrow we'll have a great foundational model, best benchmark, so on and so forth. a foundation model would be only as good as number of use cases you can play out of it. OpenAI's model strength is not the benchmarks that they're publishing. It's the people using it, people building use cases on top, people making use of it. That's more important. If you go back to Nandan Nilekani's philosophy, he's very clear that India should not burn their billions in building foundational models. India should be focused on building use cases on top. And this goes back to the thesis of the first things that we discussed. India is a service-led economy,
Services, yeah.
and and Indian services, the most of the Indian services that we export are digital services, and these are use cases that we have already built. And AI accelerates these use cases to be automated, to be made more robust, to make them more efficient, so on and so forth. And it does not matter which model you use for them in the backend until the model is good. So if India can build a model in like 1/10 of the cost, great. But India should put more focus on how will they use it. If you say now India will build an AI model at 1/10 of the cost, which cyclically also uses like 1/10 of the power or 1/10 of the resources to run it and gives like better results, that's a moat. So
Pawan, I
building
have
a
a question
foundation
on
model,
this, right?
yeah.
So when you say, obviously, there is also a whole thing about India lagging behind in some sense as opposed to a lot of the other countries when it comes to innovation in this space, right? And obviously, as somebody who is also trying to build in this space, what do you think of where we are lagging? And when you say we have to solve for relevant use cases, why are not more people thinking about it? Like, why do you think there is this gap?
There are multiple things. The question that you mentioned only, right? India is not innovating enough. When we say innovating enough, now we are saying that we'll build a model as same as what China did or what the US is doing. If it's being done the second time, it's not innovating. The only first time if someone does, no, it's called innovating. What China did, China built an open source model better than US, which takes lesser resources. That's an innovation on top of innovation.
Yeah, what if
There should be
what
a
if we
clear
build
differentiation.
yeah, what if we build a model that's even more cheaper than DeepSeek? Like, how is that not
Yeah.
something to aspire
Then it's
towards? I
innovation.
totally
But
agree.
what talks are going on is that because China built, we have to build it. Until US had built it, US had built burned billions. No one is talking about building a foundation model in India. Only when our not so friendly neighbor has built it in a less cost, now we are excited about building an
I
No,
think
that's
foundation model.
actually an interesting perspective. Yeah.
I think it's only now that we know that something like this is possible. Before we didn't know, and it's completely fine taking inspiration from another, like you said, not so friendly country, and trying to improve it. I'm not sure, and I don't know too much about this space, but
I'm 100% on it, but my only problem is that there should be a differentiation. We can't say that we have built same one. We
No,
can't be a second
I
one to do the
also think
same.
that this is not early 2000s where we say all the great foundational work will be done by US, Europe, China. We will do the last leg service delivery. We've always
Yeah.
been in this mindset that we will go after the what do you the breadcrumbs of the actual pie, but we never go after the larger pie. I'm so glad there are a bunch of young founders in India, young investors. We have to start doing things at a very similar level. If that means we are trying to copy slash taking inspiration from some other entity, some other country, then so be it. But let's go after the large revenue pools rather than trying to operate in the periphery like services per se, which might have worked well for us 10 years back, but might not work well for us great. Look at the China plus one story as well, right? Vietnam literally took away a lot of the investment that goes in the China plus one story. We couldn't capitalize on that. We need to go after the larger revenue pools, is my theory. I mean, it's my thesis. Fair.
Okay. Let's look at diaspora power. India zero.
Diaspora, India zero. Apart from India one, two, three, there is an India zero also apparently. The 35 million
Which you
strong
are part
Indian
of, Pete.
diaspora,
Which you are part of.
bro.
Mr.
I am,
Jason.
I am cursing myself for staying far away because the metro price have increased and I still haven't got there. So I am in no
It's
part
actually
of.
it's a serious concern. It's a serious concern for the
Yeah,
country.
yeah.
I agree.
I
Yeah.
sympathize with you for that. I also have that concern.
Look at this. The 35 million strong Indian diaspora contributing 107 billion in remittances is a high value market. Brands like Indie Wild and DLF target them via cultural nostalgia, luxury goods, and have you guys heard of this brand Indie Wild?
I actually have it.
No.
I mean, DLF we all know, but not.
DLF, yeah.
Indie Wild, Ayurveda meets chemistry.
Oh, this is the competitor of Forest Essentials. Got it.
Oh.
Oh, this brand. This brand
Damn,
I don't
dude.
know. Okay, let's move on. I think we are about it. That's it from this week's episode of the Indian Startup Desktop Indus Valley Report for Dummies. See you next week. Bye bye.
See you guys. Bye bye. Take care.
Subscribe.
What is this? Karina Kapoor's dietitian. Do not listen to rich boys. After listening on his quote from Kapoor's food office. Okay, I didn't.
Oh God.
Sure.